I'm going to try and state this in the most precise manner possible. Last year was an event that um, served to disillusion me. Um, and at the time it happened, I was speaking with a woman that uh, I thought was very talented in what she did. Her talent was one of those abilities that you learn, like aspect of her. So we began a dialogue. Now, in the course of questioning her about some things, um, she starts doing this what I call the hiatus game of, oh yeah, if we just talk for another year or two, uh, and we might be able to say this or do this or this might happen for you. And I said to her, this event, something I still cannot walk away from, permanently sealed an interaction I had. So why would I believe in things magically getting better because 300 days passed or some other nonsense? But I'm going to read to you what she wrote. And keep in mind, this is late August of last year. She said, I see what you mean, but what I think is you have to keep hope. I suppose the grief and pain are still very hard to overcome now, but you will get better. This is late August last year. Now, we are very close to the anniversary when those comments were made. And I can certify for you that I feel absolutely no different than how I did back then. So much so that I contacted her and I said, you sold me a bag of platitudes, and I, just don't understand why you would do that. But in the same time, I comprehend this human thing that people like, which is to say screw individual impact and just homogenize reaction. So, for example, when you get a lot of these comments about the relationship stuff and people saying that you're X, Y, and Z because you can't get with someone, they're not doing that because they have sat back and individually looked at someone like, Envoy or Dirk or VVS and inspected, their personality or their manner of behavior based off of some analysis of all their comments over time. No, they're reacting to a comment that this person left on a video or a video that this person made and now peering a window into their soul. And they want to believe these bad things about you because it is disturbing to them that a person who is having trouble with the field that they don't think normal people would have trouble with actually is normal. That you could take out the romantic difficulty, and you would find someone who, by and large, you couldn't really complain about. A person who's who handles business, generally keeps themselves, avoids drama. It's a situation that they don't want to concede as being real. No, everybody has to either be someone who is occasionally getting dates, a playboy, or some woman hater because of troubled relationships. There's no middleman. There's no one who's just tired of a pattern of behavior by a set number of people within a group. That doesn't exist anymore. We have to go to these extremes to satisfy our own biases. That's why, for as much as I like TYT, they tried to brand a lot of these conservative leaning people as having some, hatred of women. And it was absurd to me because I've seen, they use this as an example of why they can't get with someone, in spite of the fact that people who lean to the left, such as myself, have the same problem. So it's more virtue signaling. Let me read the comments. She blew it with me saying, let's talk for before it becomes more important to me. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Dirk, one of the, I guess what I could really chalk it up to is that very few things bother me as much as the romance thing, just because that's been going on for as long as it has. Um, but when something, which it did, hits me more than that, it makes everything that's underneath start becoming, you lose patience for it. Like, let's pretend you're working at some job and you're struggling to pay rent, At the same time, you're trying to court, you know, various women or meet them online or in person, and then you get fired from that position. You're not really going to care about trying to get with anyone during this time of, you know, trial and struggle. And even if you still want to be with a person, you're still going to have those thoughts of how the hell am I going to pay off this rent? How am I going to, you know, satisfy whatever quota I need done? Just those thoughts do not go out of your mind in between something serious happening. They actually cause the that event to take on a lesser significance for you, or you have less patience for it, but it's still there. So, for example, after this event happened, I noticed a gradual decline in how much patience I had for this romantic stuff. So, for example, it's a lot easier to just type something to someone on a computer versus, you know, going out to a place and saying something. But in the, I think it was 3 or 4 times I attempted that between, again, in person this year and last year, I noticed a gradual disgust with each interaction, because I felt as though the person who I was talking with was almost going out of their way to just be this closed block that effectively wanted to say screw you. You know, I described, you know, walking down the street and talking to this woman and asking her if she wanted my number, and her, you know, declining. And when you look at things such as that, and you think about all of these different advice places where they say, oh, if you just go and do this, things will change. Just go and do this, things will have a heightened increase. You start really evaluating how nonsensical it all is. What do you mean if I watch your video, I'm going to get some random woman who, for all I know, doesn't even like anything about me to now be interested? What do you mean if I go and do this, things are suddenly going to have a metamorphosis and I'm going to not remember all the times that they pissed me off with, you know, these various acts of theirs? But you know what I want you to understand is that as I described this encounter, and there were other ones. I told you about the one where I walked up to this woman, said, "Hey, I wanted to speak to you," and she just walked away from me. The reason I bring these up is because when they're mentioned, I know it's going to elicit a reaction in the non-believer who will say, you know, you probably did this wrong, you probably wore this, you probably da 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 da. And ultimately, what you have to understand is that this is part of a series of goalposts that you're going to encounter in your own life. So, for example, as I sit here and talk about these things, someone will say, I actually had a person recommend recording these encounters. Now, if I were to record the audio of these encounters, I would then have people who would either come to two conclusions if they're a detractor. One is that you didn't do the right thing. The other one is that, oh, this didn't work because we need to see the appearance of the person. And so if you allow the camera to show off the appearance of whoever you approached, you run into legality issues. In addition to them then saying, oh, this person's out of your league, or, oh, where are you? Reveal to us. For just it becomes a game of seeking more and more information for the sake of confirming their own bias. They don't want to believe that someone who isn't total trash is struggling with this. They want to write off everybody in the comments section right now as just some depraved misogynist. No, it wasn't. They were a regular viewer. And that was their way of hoping that they could comprehend this. And I've had people try to on various platforms insist on playing this inspection game, and I absolutely hate it. An example would be when I was on Instagram one time. I posted this picture. It was maybe mid last year, you know, somewhere around that time. But I posted this photo, and it was some song lyric that was accompanied by a picture of a man asking a woman out, I think for marriage or some kind of date. It was just some picture I found off Google Images, and this guy goes, "Oh man, that sucks." And I think he asked me how old I was or something, and then is like, what kind of personality type are you? And at that point, I ended the conversation, because a lot of times when you post something which could be considered venting, as this kind of is, you're not really doing it for the sake of having some dialogue where the person comes at you from the perspective of you have some kind of issue that I need to fix or that I can identify, even though I'm in no position to do so because I don't know you. So let's find out. Another encounter was when I was talking about the my memory slips a blank, but the point is that a lot of these interactions I've tried to pay attention to, as far as just, hey, this person wants to say this person is saying they get this, and it seems as though the more you go out of your way to not just say, okay, I'm just going to talk on this camera or I'm going to talk on this post and then leave it as it is, there's this invitation to do one of two things. You have people who will badmouth you, which they're expected in every category, or go out of their way to write comments that are designed to tell you that something you're doing is so off-putting that a person who again has never encountered you, is some expert on. And the saddest thing about the second category is that they want you to believe they are here to assist you, but their own narratives oftentimes don't match up. So, for example, and VVS remembers this story well. There was a user who posted how you have to do all these new things if you're to increase your skill set among women or some nonsense. And VVS was going back and forth with him for a while. Eventually, I didn't directly confront him with the hypocrisy in his own words, but the way it works is this: my content, and at least the relationship stuff, you have to look up. This is a person who's going on to relationship material, and telling you how you need to not focus on it. When if he wasn't focusing on it, he wouldn't have found this content. That's like me saying, hey, don't watch whatever show is currently on television, and then giving you a DVD of the episodes. Yeah, VVS, you remember? But the reason I bring that up is because here's the hypocrisy. He says, you have to do these things to improve yourself for this better skill set that will make you more attractive to women. But in another post he had, he also mentioned you cannot. It's not the fault of the woman for turning you down, even though she's the one who made the choice to do it, and it's also not your fault. So if it's not your fault, why the hell would you have to improve yourself with crap you would have never been into? See, the whole narrative is not, it doesn't align. If someone is into something, if they're seriously into it, they're not going to care if it turns somebody on. I'm into writing and drawing and other video projects because I just want it to be made. I want it to be done. I want it to actually see the light of day. It doesn't have to do with, getting somebody in bed or any of this other nonsense. I don't even know what Ken is saying. He always writes the most. I swear, it's like he's taking those comments off of a Google Doc and just pasting them in here. But yeah, this also wasn't meant to really harp on the relationship aspect of it. I'm merely describing this because I want you to understand you can be the most physically healthy person as far as just not necessarily eating anything that's out of line, or you get the idea that you're someone who tries to take care of yourself in many ways. But if there is an internal feeling of missing something, and it goes on year after year, and you feel it, video after video, vlog post after vlog post, no amount of virtue signaling and telling you how you're so terrible for this is going to change that. I know what it's like to go and read many of these relationship advice places and feel as though I just had however many minutes it took of that to read of my life wasted because the person who wrote it was fully aware that they don't have these same troubles, and yet somehow felt themselves compelled to write something that they thought the rest of us were just going to eat the scraps of. But when I talk about this event, refer telling in this certain way. Okay, yeah. So that comment was in line with that. Yeah, I guess there is a delay. I'm not really that sure. But as I was trying to say, the dehumanizing part of the title comes from the fact that it seems in this current era, you have a lot of, and I really don't like making this stuff gender based, but I'm going off of what I've seen. We've all heard the Benjamin Franklin quote at this point: "Believe none of what you hear, and only half of what you see." When I talk about this event, this thing that really bothered me, this thing that I couldn't and still can't escape from, a lot of people interpret that to be a psychological thing, and it very much is linked to feelings that you have unfinished business that you can no longer ever attend to. But also, it's based on the idea that something that you are very bothered by, you cannot speak on with clarity because we have this tendency to pounce on whatever weakness we see in a person. So, for example, and I have noticed that very rarely does it seem in recent years do I ever get called dumb or stupid for, yeah, that quote is real to me, Dirk. But I was saying that I very rarely get insulted over my intelligence as I did in years past. And so now the realm of this satisfaction with me from your standard detractor is rooted in relationships and interactions and people that you associate yourself with. And what I find so funny is that on a platonic level, I have chosen for things to be the way they are. But I would almost say that as far as the romances are concerned, it's the equivalent of having both of your arms tied up against separate parts of a wall, along with your legs, and just being forced to be in this one spot while everything around you shifts and moves. And sometimes you also meet someone who's in the same fixed spot, but you don't really ever you 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 always feel a sense of aggravation because you don't want to be in this fixed spot, but because of the choices of others, you're in that position. I hate it when we can't just concede this very simple idea. If I went up to Envoy and I said, "Hey, let's be best friends. Let's talk on the phone every single day," and he says, "Well, that sounds like a great idea," and me and him just start talking on the phone every day. Those are two people that got together and said, "This is how this is going to be." If VVS and some woman get together and they say, "Hey, let's go and get married in 2 weeks," 14 days pass and they're married, what does that tell you? They both made that decision. But this is how unfair the belief in the lack of any decent quality that has come from just. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without sounding so nuanced. This is where the continuation of believing that guys who have trouble with this are just horrible people has really been unfair. You are getting told that there is something wrong with you mentally, that you lack some kind of skill or ability based off another person's perception of you. In a lot of cases, it's not even the woman that you actually approached and got to know for any decent duration of time. It's someone just saying, "No, I don't want to do anything with you," and then somebody else saying, "Oh, well, this person who took absolutely no time to try to get to know you is somehow in the right, and there is something wrong with you, and forget the fact that you've been able to live a productive life and not struggle with anything other than this. No, you're just horrible. Get out of here." I've seen that be posted. I've even had an individual who recanted those views, and what always bothered me was I could never quite understand how you could even think that in the first place. how you could actually believe that someone who you could sit there and see and know had some redeeming quality automatically had to have something screwed up with them for any of this to make sense. That if this person had 40 or 50 people, not give them the time of day voluntarily, which is something that most of us do to most people we encounter, just not on the one-on-one basis. There was something wrong with that person. That this person was supposed to be able to walk on water and make women that didn't even try to get to know him, that just said, "I don't want to talk to you," suddenly want to speak. Some higher level, yeah. Well, that's the thing, VVS. I think that if I were to talk about other topics that disillusion me, it would be seen as whining. Just personal things, not like, oh, the economy sucks or anything. But if you had a woman speaking about these issues and her troubles with men and her troubles with, you know, life altering events that she could never walk back from, you wouldn't have anyone telling her to get over it and, stop being a wimp and all this other, you know, nonsense. Again, my reason for titling this the dehumanization is the fact that we've gotten to a point where we hear about these shootings and all these people that are getting slaughtered and blown to pieces, and it's just like whatever because there's so many of them going on, whether it's on a large scale like a mass shooting, or it's just a daily shooting across the U.S. in different inner cities. And when you get used to that, along with going up to women and having them maybe talk to you for like 2 or 3 messages before quitting it altogether, and then getting blamed by somebody else who didn't even take the time to ask or talk to you about anything, and can solely judge your worth off of a video or a post, that's hell. Because it's dehumanizing, all of it, every little bit of it. It's not dehumanizing to say I don't want to go on a date with someone, but it is dehumanizing for a person to be at first treated poorly by another. You talk for 2 or 3 messages and they just say screw it, and then be told by someone else, you're the reason for that. In those 2 or 3 messages, you were supposed to sweep her off her feet, but because you didn't, there's some kind of issue with you. There's something wrong with the idea that you can sit here and go through things in your daily life. So, whether it's something happens with family or something happens with place you're staying at or work, and then because you dare to share a smidge of that with someone that you actually want to, have a connection with that is not just platonic, you're told that you were too much of a whiner. You're told to just keep all of that bottled up, and not think about anything. Let's see. I think Envoy must have gone to sleep, as well as Dirk. But yeah, that event to close this out, because I know people are trying to get. The older I grew, the value in people is hard to see. Well, that's the thing, and what I hate is that most of us are not going to pay attention to each other at all. That just is the truth. So when you have most women you encounter treat you like crap, along with most males or whatever, I don't see where that doesn't correlate to that fact, which is that most of us pay very little attention, if any, to most people we encounter. It's in that same category. But that when you say something like that, it implies logic and reasoning that a lot of these people don't want to accept. Um, they want confirmation bias. But yeah, the event that I described to her and that I'm describing even more vaguely to the rest of you, um, was the direct result, or rather was the prologue to a state of continued dissatisfaction. Um, and look, I'm not saying anything about, oh my God, it's so horrible, but it does eat away at me. And nothing no one writes online is going to change that fact. It's an event I cannot remove from what has happened, and Unfortunately, we have this group of people who likes to virtue signal and tell you it's gonna be okay, no matter how incredulous it seems. And it's really damaging to those that can't think for themselves or those that are in a vulnerable state, because it's going to potentially serve to just screw them over. But the event has definitely prompted a lot of the activity that has been seen over the last year. I recognize that a very solid number of males are not, uh, either that are not going through this, are not here to assist and actually empathize with their supposed fellow gender. They are here to discriminate, disillusion, and treat poorly people who they call themselves being similar in being males to. And they might be males, but they act as if they're not human males, because no human male with humanity would crucify an entire group of people that they've never sat down and tried to speak with directly. And a lot of these women are not actually seeking partners and people to share a desirable long-term circumstance with, but instead are uh, positioning themselves as live-in escorts. When I talked about the prostitutes thing, you have a lot of women who have talent. The one that pissed me off last year, for as much as I'm still mad at her for doing that, she has a talent, something that I don't encounter very often. Um, and that's why it further disgusts me when you sit here and you try to give them a proposal and you lay out how this talent can be accommodated, and you're turned a deaf ear uh, by this person. They can't see anything outside of their immediate world. When you start talking about 5, 10 years later, it's a foreign concept, and a lot of people are in that mindset of living for today. Just doing something to get by, going around and trying to appease whoever they think is the most popular instead of whoever they think is in the most right. Um, you know, it is a game that I've really gotten tired of, and that's why when people leave their standard comments trying to sway me or change my mind, I just usually don't even respond anymore, because the people who are writing them want to believe something, which is fine, but they can't just leave it at that. They have to tell you this so they can feel comfortable with themselves for having seen something that makes them uncomfortable. I refuse to believe that I, or most of the frequent commenters in the stream are so horrible as to not be able to qualify for a group of people who has, in many cases, shown laziness in their own lives. I talked a year ago about the woman who reacted to being spoken about in the video. And like I said to you guys before, she admitted she just sat at her house and gained weight. That was her own description of herself. And when I heard that and I thought about all the ways in which I've been told to do X, Y, and Z, I said, screw it. And I guess what it really boils down to is a feeling of just being sick of it all. I'm tired of, you know, reading these comments. I'm tired of the chase of going out, talking to somebody, hoping that that they happen to be into what you look like or what you're, into, and then after it's over, being told how horrible and terrible you are by, people who either don't know you or have not tried to get to know what the situation is. It's all just grandstanding and virtue signaling at this point, to such an effect that I really try to distance myself from it. I try to get away from those individuals. Life is too short to tell someone that they suck and then expect them to want to listen to anything else you have to say. So, thank you for watching. And like I said, if you feel that someone is worth your time going up to, do it. But As far as all this crap about, um, oh, there's something you can get a woman if you just follow my 16 steps. Screw that. You know, a lot of us want something. A lot of us wanted to be married. A lot of us wanted to have a long-standing interaction with someone we could feel comfortable telling them how we feel about things. And you can get that if the other person decides for it to be that way and compromises and accepts there is no perfect man. And a lot of women who see that, who hear that, will say that they don't believe that. But when you go on, when I show you all of these posts on these sites, you know, must be at least 5'10", all this other nonsense, things I even sometimes qualify for, and still think it's nonsensical that you can tell me you're not looking for the perfect person, yet you have a laundry list of things that you want somebody to be. We all have Dirk. It's a running pattern. You feel comfortable with the fact that you at least heard the other person out. They get a smidget of what you said, and here comes a paragraph telling you how horrible you are. And I don't have patience for it anymore. So thank you. Have a good day.